Okay, so now I am unmuted in both places. Thank you, Andre, for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. I will not speak Portuguese for my portion of the presentation, for putting up with my English. Obrigado. What we will do today is go through three simple things in my portion, and then I will let the NetBR engineers show you the product and give you a taste. The three simple things we will go through are, first, why we should focus on privilege at all. Second, what the challenges there are in securing privilege. And then finally, how NetBR and Lieberman can help you automate security for privilege. And then we'll do a demonstration of that as well. So we're going to try to tell you that privilege does need special attention. And with so many things in security that need our attention, I figured it would be good to give you reasons why. So here's a top 5 list of why privilege needs special attention. First of all, the people who use privilege are going to be anonymous unless you do something to stop them. Basically, all of the people who are doing privilege in your organization are likely acting with administrative rights, and those administrative rights are giving them the ability to do things that most users never can. And because they have these elevated abilities, they can actually be invisible in the organization. And by being invisible, they obviously break security models. And so the first notion in security is to make sure you know who is doing what. And the only way that you can do this with privilege is by tracking it in a special way. Access to privilege must be granted to systems in a just-in-time fashion. These privileges that these administrators get are always going to be taken and used just when they need to be used. But what that means is that when it comes time to give those out, you have to have a system to let that happen. Otherwise, you have the dangerous situation that many people are in today, where many people walk around with privilege access all the time. Now, the first reason is part of that, where they can act anonymously, but if they have privilege all the time, that also means that they can be dangerous all the time. And it's not just them who can be dangerous, because maybe someone with privilege can do bad things. If you try to cut your butter with a chainsaw, you can easily cut through the countertop. It's an easy mistake to make. And walking around with, let's say, the root ID on a Unix system, this is like a chainsaw. You can easily buzz through things by mistake. But even worse, if an attacker, someone using malware, gets into the system of this person who has privilege and is able to hijack their privilege because it's just sitting around, they can be even worse because they want to use the chainsaw in a very bad way on purpose. Privilege needs a system to create friction, not remove it. In IT, there's always a push to make things easier for the user. And in almost every case, this is the right thing to do. You want to make it easy for the user to do certain things. But when it comes to privilege, it is a very special case where today, in many ways, it is too easy because these people walk around with privilege all the time. They can then act anonymously and with great power by mistake or through an attack. And they do it because it's just easy for them to have the administrator password all the time. It's easy for them to have the elevated access all the time. They don't have to go through any steps, and they like that. But it's not safe. And so privilege systems need to put a few steps in there to make sure that there can be control. Now, before that sounds too negative, this can also be protection for these people. Because if I have 6 administrators and all 6 have administrative access all the time, if something goes wrong, I have 6 suspects. But if I have a system where the system knows who had the access when, I have 1 suspect. They should like that. But you need something to put some friction in there, which is unusual in IT, but it's true. The way that you're going to succeed is automating all of this, right? This system to create friction should be as highly automated as possible. And it should also be easy for the end user to use. It's not as easy as just having root all the time, right? It takes a step now to get to it, but that step should not be that difficult to do. And the system that controls it should do everything else for you. It should all happen automatically. All of this begs for a system to be put in place that has the ability to automate at the scale of your organization, at the speed you need to control things, that keeps the accountability and makes sure that people go through the right steps. Last but not least, everything else you are doing in security is useless if you are not controlling privilege. If no other reason on this list motivates you, this one should. Because if someone has the administrator access and can go turn off all your other security controls because they have that privileged power, it doesn't matter that they exist. It's like in the movies where the person can go in and delete the videotape that showed them sneaking into the vault and erase all of the information about them entering the building. If they have that power, it's nearly impossible to catch them, whether it's them or someone who stole their power because it was just sitting around. So if you don't control privilege, everything else you're doing is really just theater. It's a show. You have to control privilege to really lock down security. So these are the reasons why you should pay special attention to privilege. But let's talk about what this privilege is and how it affects things. Now, I just said if you have no control over privilege, nothing else matters. But in today's world, maybe nothing else matters anyway. Because if we look at the breaches that are around us, every single one of the breach victims had firewalls, they had anti-malware and antivirus, they had some sort of intrusion protection, 100% of them. But that did not protect them. Why? Well, this has to do with how we are being attacked today. If you look at the typical attack, and this is supposed to lay out something that looks like a kill chain, right? The method through which you will be attacked. What you see at the top are things you'll never be able to stop. Them poking at you to find out what's going on, step one. And step two, them getting in because someone was dumb enough to click on a phishing email. And that's a problem that we will never solve. But at the bottom, steps 4 and 5, we see where they do the real damage. When they're inside, spreading in our systems that we are responsible for, that we owe it to our customers to protect, and getting the data. And what is in the middle? In the middle is the difference between just being annoying and being dangerous. It's when they obtain privilege. It's when they get that privileged ID. And the entire idea is that if you can protect that from happening, or at least make it a lot more difficult, because attackers are lazy. It's difficult to move to an easier target. Privileged identity management can help you stop that so that the bad effects of them being able to do the dangerous things are much less. And that is where privilege is different than other problems. It's not just about security, too. All of the regulators have realized this through South America, North America, Europe, Australia, Everywhere where we have regulation, you see these regulators recognizing that privilege is part of the problem. And we won't focus here today. This is here for your reference later when you look at the slides. But just know that if you're trying to fund the project, let's say, in part through audit and compliance, or if you're interested in serving both security and audit goals, privilege can do just that. What is it that Lieberman does? We use automation at scale to protect privileged credentials from bad guys that want them and the insiders that can abuse them. In summary, that's what we do. So we know now that securing these privileged identities is crucial. The bad guys want them. They're trying to break in and get them. Maybe the insiders are trying to do bad things with them too. Regulations zero in on this problem and make it part of your audit and compliance burden. Analysts, platform providers, security-driven organizations, they all see this problem. So we all know we need to do something, but what are the challenges that have kept us from solving these problems? The first challenge is simply the scale of the issue. Every single thing, physical and virtual, in your environment, in the cloud or on premises, if it has a green blinking light or a virtual green blinking light, it has an administrative ID. Even your security devices like firewalls have administrative privileges. They're everywhere. It's not just about servers. And in fact, it's not even just about the systems. Every single piece of software tends to have privilege associated with it. Some software, like database systems, have multiple layers of privilege that need to be managed. You could have a single server that runs database systems and web servers and has multiple access methods, and that means you could literally have dozens and dozens of privileges to be managed on just that one system because of all the software running there. And last but not least, there are, of course, the people, because all of the systems and all of the software that have privilege wouldn't be a problem by themselves if you didn't also have to grant access to all of that to all of these people. And every single one of the people on this list has a legitimate reason to access privilege at some point. And in a lot of organizations, they're all walking around with lots of privilege all the time. And the two on the very ends, the system integrators on the left and the contractors on the right, these are the ones that really worry many organizations, because these are people who are not even really aligned to your organization's mission, not truly under your control, but still have the keys to your kingdom, have the ability to use privilege. Managing these challenges, being able to cover the entire scope of your environment in the cloud, on premises, in your contractors, being able to do it across all the software platforms in all the different people and use cases. This has made this an amazingly large challenge, and it's why many people have not yet tackled it. The scale and scope of the problem that we've just described has only one answer, and that is automation. The only way you can solve these problems is to automate the solution, because if you try to do it by hand, you will not win, because your adversaries, they're automated. The people who are attacking you are using sophisticated systems to do it. And I don't just mean the malware itself that might land on a system, which is sophisticated in many cases, but they also have tracking systems and analytics. There are multiple layers of companies. People don't tend to think of it this way. Many times they picture the bad guy as someone in their basement eating Cheetos and drinking energy drinks, acting alone. But there are entire companies in Russia and China and Eastern Europe with benefits and retirement plans that do nothing but hack all day long. This is what they do for a living. And that kind of professional approach and automated systems and software upon layer of software is attacking you. So you need to have a sophisticated response to that as well. So if we think about the most sophisticated response we've dealt with, I think of a particular customer. Now, I have a choice when I talk about customers. I can either tell you the customer's name or I can tell you the customer's story. And in this case, I want to tell you the story, but I can't tell you the name that means. But you might be able to guess through the story, but I won't confirm or deny. Let's just call it a small technology company in the northwest of the United States. And they also happen to be the second most attacked surface on the internet. They are attacked constantly. And they are deployed to over 1 million endpoints. And right now they're aiming for 1.3 million total on a number of different types of systems. And it's worth to note that our system is only part of this. The privilege management is part of a larger whole. They run an extremely disciplined shop where they do many things just for security reasons that I've seen literally no one else doing. But the key here is that the way that they've been able to achieve such a large deployment in such a hostile environment is by automating everything. All million plus of their deployment uses our PowerShell and web services to run all of the access to privilege because they have so many specific use cases for themselves. Our interface could never have possibly met it, the web UI. So they built their own ways to use it, but we gave them the platform to do that, right? They also automate full rotation of credentials if there's even the notion of an incident. So the idea would be if something seems wrong, just in case, they'll rotate everything. And they can do that very fast across the entire environment. And again, that's because they've been able to build scale. And we'll talk about how they built the scale in a short while. They also have basically completely eliminated the idea of anyone having a privilege unless they absolutely need it right at that moment. And so they built this just-in-time admin system so that when people need privilege, they can get it, but they have to have a reason, they have to have a ticket, they have to have all of the things lined up to make it happen to use that legitimate use. And yes, they do have a break-the-glass way to get to it as well, but for everyday use, it's using this system. And last but not least, they also have an aggressive credential rotation system, including using our unique double tap system in case they have a golden ticket attack where somebody does a pass the hash with the highest level of Active Directory authority. If you want to read more about golden ticket, we have many blog posts, and I'm sure our NetBR friends could help with that as well. But the idea is that this is a gigantic deployment, highly automated, and even if you're only 1/100th the size of this organization, maybe 1/1000th the size of this organization, the way that they're protecting themselves is exactly what you should be aiming for too, and you need a system that will help you do it. So this is what we've tried to do with Enterprise Random Password Manager, ERPM. We tried to automate everything as much as possible. We've automated the bringing on of systems through discovery. We could find new systems, find new accounts, find the policies on those systems, bring them into the right classifications and groups, and run actions to manage them all through an automated system. Everything in ERPM is a job. And what this means is it's all been designed to run on demand or on a schedule, incomplete. And that means you can set up a job and put it on a schedule, so that way for things like regular rotation of credentials, you just rotate them on a regular basis and it just works. Or they can be run through other systems. Maybe you have an automated build system for your cloud operation where you build up Linux servers on demand and you put them through a production process. And at some point during that process, you want the privileged security applied. That's fine. You set up the job, and then you call it through that system. This is something a lot of customers do as well. When people think of privilege protection, they often think of a simple concept of vaulting, right? And we have our own secure library that we talk about that does the same thing. But we want you to go far beyond that, because typically that is talking about passwords that will be used by humans in very small footprints. We want you to automate all of your operations, every service account, every account being used for applications, everything that used to be a password sitting in a configuration file. All of these should be aggressively rotated, and we give you the way to do that at scale. And last but not least, we totally encourage you to plug all this into your orchestrated operations so that if you already have something through which you are running your whole organization in an automatic fashion, we can plug right into that today. And that way, instead of just becoming something that sits outside of this beautiful edifice you've built, we become part of it. So how do we do this, right? And this would be a very long conversation, but let's do the easy version, right? We do this with our flexible open architecture. So you have ERPM, and as a system, it goes and automates all the rotation of the credentials. But there are many common things that people ask about, right? So last night, through some operation, 1,000 new virtual machines popped up. Now, 1,000 is a pretty big number, probably means you have to do something to address that. We have the notion of these processors, zone processors. What do? They run jobs for us. So 1,000 new VMs means 1,000 new VMs worth of jobs. I put a zone processor out, it can now handle all of those jobs. And I probably had a couple already doing other things, but I can very easily just deploy a new one. And I can even automate that deployment. Well, maybe you buy a new company or merge with a new company, and there's 3,000 VMs that appear. Well, guess what? Same idea. We take zone processors, we match them up. And 1,000 to 1, that's a conservative. We have customers who run them at much higher and lower, depending on what they ask the zone processor to do. Another question usually is, okay, we're running a project in the cloud. How would we cover all of those systems if we run ERPM, either on premises or maybe in a different cloud? That's okay too. It's the same answer, believe it or not, because the way the zone processor is designed is that it can very easily and with just one connection talk back to the center of ERPM and get things done. So from a scale perspective and a speed perspective, once you're operational, this is how you do it. You take these zone processors and you throw them where you need them. Maybe you have operations across an ocean and you want to have the jobs run independently over there, but still manage them centrally. You put a zone processor over there. You get the idea. Now, once you have all these diverse things hooked into ERPM, it's very likely that you don't want one set of admins to see the stuff the other set of admins is in charge of. Maybe the new company that we just bought. We don't want them to see anything in the cloud project. That should be a separation of duties. No problem. We have the ability to put web UIs, including, by the way, the web services, out for audiences of users that are completely separate and distinct. And that means that there are two levels of separation. There is, of course, a delegated role-based security model built in, so that you can separate people that way. But you can also put them into a web interface where they can even have a wholly separate way to authenticate than the other one, and it only ever shows them maybe the stuff for the acquisition company or the stuff for the cloud, and that's all they ever see. And that capability lets you separate things out very easily and nicely. Another thing that comes up is, well, if we're going to have all of this information being generated by the system every time an admin touches privilege, every time somebody starts up an SSH session with root for this system, well, those are really interesting things for my SIM and analytics platforms to analyze. So we have something called the event sync that allows you to spit out all this information in exactly the right form so that you can get things done. Maybe they want, in the hardcore security world, everything to be protected with hardware level encryption. No problem. We can integrate with any HSM module that you want to provide the highest level of encryption. We also let you bring your own software encryption, and we include very sophisticated encryption out of the box if that's what you prefer. And sometimes we don't know what to expect because you bring us some system we've never heard of. Here I try to use humor. The Acme exploding IT system obviously doesn't exist. But someone just bought it yesterday and they come to you, the people who manage ERPM, and say, integrate with it. Well, that's why you have both the web services and the event sync. Between one of these two, you will be able to integrate, to talk back and forth, to push data to it. There are hundreds, literally, of possibilities on how the integration can take place. This all speaks to that scalability, speed, and openness that lets you get to that automated platform. So as my last thought here, I just give you a vision. This is what you should be aiming for, regardless of the size or complexity of your operation, right? The idea should be that you have security admins delegating the control of privilege by setting strong proactive controls in a privilege identity management system, and likely closely link that with identity systems and with governance systems, so that essentially they all work as one whole, and you end up with a governance-driven security and identity system that's near as fully automated as possible, right? This is the vision you should be going for. If you can get even part of this going, you'll be way ahead of most of your competitors and definitely at the cutting edge of the market. So now we want to show you a little bit of how you can do that. I'll let my friends at NetBR take over again and show you what they have.
Bom dia, senhores. Rafael da NetBR. Jonathan, thank you for the presentation. It was awesome. I'm going to quickly demonstrate for you. Desculpa, continuei em inglês. Vou demonstrar rapidamente para vocês algumas das features que o Jonathan estava comentando sobre. Então, essa é a console principal do RPM. Quando o Jonathan comentou sobre Discovery, essa é uma das views que você pode ter sobre o ambiente de vocês, relacionado a todas as contas que vocês têm e quais são as utilizações delas no parque. Então, por exemplo, essa conta de domínio WebPP está sendo usada para um IIS account, um application pool, que no caso é esse cara aqui. Então, esse application pool usa uma conta de domínio para se autenticar nos outros dispositivos. Isso vale para virtualmente qualquer tipo de dispositivo ou conta. Então, contas de serviço, então essa conta roda esse serviço dentro desse equipamento, contas de aplicação, essa conta é a conta de serviço do Microsoft SQL. Basicamente, tudo que tem um vínculo da conta sendo utilizada para o que a gente chama de account store, que é a origem da conta, o dispositivo que criou aquela credencial, o RPM consegue fazer o traceback, inclusive também para chaves SSH, onde ele consegue demonstrar quais são as utilizações do mesmo conjunto de chaves entre diversos dispositivos. Então, como isso funcionaria no mundo real, pensando numa integração total, que nem o Jonathan disse, que seria o cenário de melhor ganho em termos de segurança. Eu tenho a minha aplicação web, eu não sou desenvolvedor, então desculpem pelo layout, e tenho o meu RPM. O RPM já mapeou que essa conta de serviço que a aplicação usa, o SVC app, é utilizada pelo meu IS Application Pool. Se eu quiser trocar essa conta, imagine um parque agora de 30 máquinas com o mesmo cenário, 30 servidores web com a mesma aplicação. Se eu quiser trocar isso na mão, eu vou causar uma parada de serviço em algum momento. O que o RPM faz pela gente? Eu crio um job, como o Jonathan disse, tudo no RPM é um job, e digo para ele, troque a senha da conta de serviço WebApp e faça uma propagação em todas as máquinas do grupo Propagation, em todas as vezes que você encontrar essa conta no IS Account. Além disso, eu posso colocar outros parâmetros, como complexidade da senha. Digamos que eu quero uma senha de 32 caracteres, 16 caracteres, com qual complexidade necessária. Também existem alguns filtros de complexidade que vale a pena ser mencionados, como, por exemplo, sistemas Oracle, você não pode colocar um arroba na senha que a senha se torna inválida. Poderia executar tarefas de pre-run e post-run, ou alertar os usuários que a senha vai ser trocada em determinado momento, antes da operação. E quando o RPM executa esse job, ele troca a senha no Active Directory, nesse caso, e já propaga para o sistema IS, sem causar a parada da minha aplicação aqui do lado. Isso também vale para sistemas onde você quer criar o desenvolvimento seguro, onde a aplicação não tem mais a senha armazenada dentro do código. Então, eu tenho um exemplo de aplicação aqui, que faz a conexão ao RPM, pega a senha de um usuário de SQL Server, exibe na tela, monta uma connection string e roda uma query, que, no caso, uma query simples, ela só pega a data hora daquele sistema SQL. Então, é literalmente esse cara aqui. E o que eu posso fazer? Eu posso usar o RPM para trocar a senha desse usuário SQL em tempo de execução, sem causar uma parada dessa aplicação. Então, eu posso vir aqui e rodar esse job literalmente o dia inteiro, várias vezes, que a senha vai sendo atualizada e a aplicação em si nunca vai ter ciência de que aquilo está sendo gerenciado dessa forma. Esse é um método de trabalho dos mais simples. Eu estou usando essa conta de serviço do Web Application para se autenticar no cofre do RPM. Existem outras maneiras de autenticação, certificado digital, por exemplo. Isso vai na linha do modelo de DevOps, onde você faz a promoção do código entre os ambientes de desenvolvimento, homologação e produção, sem que o código tenha interação depois da parte de desenvolvimento. Então, enquanto você está no ambiente de desenvolvimento, onde tudo é aberto, os dados são fictícios, a equipe de desenvolvimento tem acesso completo ao código. Quando ele é promovido à homologação, o código por si só vai se gerenciar, não precisa de alteração, por exemplo, em homologação eu tenho outro username, um outro sistema, tudo isso já fica padronizado. Ambos os códigos acessam o ambiente do RPM para pegar as credenciais, então só o cofre sabe as credenciais antes mesmo da aplicação e o desenvolvedor, e ninguém tem mais contato com o código até que ele chegue em produção. Agora eu vou passar para o André, para ele fazer o encerramento para a gente.
Bom, pessoal, eu gostaria de agradecer a participação de todos, em especial o Jonathan, com a sua apresentação e disponibilidade em compartilhar um pouco do seu conhecimento no mercado brasileiro. A gente fica ao inteiro dispor de esclarecimentos de dúvidas e, novamente, agradeço a presença de todos. Estamos gravando o webinar e estaremos disponibilizando para vocês também. Um abraço a todos e um bom dia.